Notacon.
Well, welcome to GIMP this, Photoshop this, GIMP that.
Yeah.
Stylus presentation. First off, I'm Jeff. I'm actually hail from Monroe, Michigan, but currently a student at EMU. I just do this as a hobby. I started this about like a year ago, getting into GIMP, just playing around with it pretty much. I'm actually a computer science major, so this kind of shows that really anyone can get into doing graphic designs and playing around with Photoshop and GIMP, and you don't need to really be going into this professionally. Though on the other hand here, it's my friend Corey that I've met for this presentation, and he is going into this on the professional side, so I'll let him introduce himself.
All right, my name is Corey Houston. I go to Eastern Michigan University. I'm a senior in the graphic design program there. I'm a Photoshop user, and I love it. It's a great program. To me, design is something that you can never, exhaust all of the possibilities, and I think that's what makes it so exciting and challenging at the same time. Well, we're going to start off with an introduction of just the different programs, and first of all is Adobe's Creative Suite. And Adobe in general, the Creative Suite consists of all of the different programs that you would ever need to create any kind of web or print graphic. Actually, I didn't know if they just released Creative Suite too, so this is cool. I'm finding out for the first time.
Release party.
But Adobe's the industry standard, and it's an industry standard for a reason. It's a great program. And it started out just for using for photos, for editing photos, but it's turned into a program that a lot of graphic designers use to edit images and do different kinds of things with their photos. Sure. Yeah, better. I'm going to let Jeff talk about the GIMP for a minute here.
GIMP is kind of the open source counterpart to Photoshop, if you could think of it like that. It started like most good open source projects did, and I believe it started by a student in Berkeley and has come a long way since then. They actually have a history of everything on their actual site here. GIMP, it's a great reference, in my opinion, for anything GIMP related. They have manuals, tutorials, they have a bunch of books listed online. I was actually surprised by how many books are actually in print for GIMP. Most of them are outdated though. Only one of them is up to date with all the features, and that's in French. So any French users, French writers can read that. First though, we'd kind of like to talk about what actually is graphic design. What would you be expecting? Most people would think just taking a picture and pulling it into your program and editing it, printing it off, and then that's just graphic design. But it can really range from everything from print to doing web design. Actually, he is the print guy, so I'll let him go into that a bit.
Well, print design is basically anything that you see printed, magazines, brochures, newspapers, anything like that. Someone has to do that. Someone has to design that. The idea is, again, you design it with the text and you add your graphic in, and it gets outputted for people to read. There's a lot of things that make a good design, and there's a lot of things that make a bad design. If you're reading something and it's difficult to read, if the type is too small or it's not arranged in a way that makes a whole lot of sense, and it's a bad design. It's not something that whoever's in charge of doing that's going to be doing for very long. The idea is to create something that's visually appealing, but something that people can actually read too, and would be interested in, if it's like a brochure, interested in picking up if they see it lying down on a table. The more interesting it is, the more likely they're to pick it up, even if they're not really interested in what the brochure is talking about. And that's a very cool thing about design. As a graphic designer, that's your challenge, to try to get that person to pick that brochure up and find it interesting. So I'll let Jeff talk for a quick second about the web, because that's a whole another area.
Again, is actually when we were working on this project, throw together a presentation, Corey made the example that when someone says that they do graphics, it's kind of like saying that someone does computers. Well, what aspect? So the real reason I really got into GIMP was because I was really into web design and trying to figure out how to put up my own graphics instead of just stealing someone else's off the internet and slapping it up there and calling my website. But with web graphics, you have a lot of the same aspects as with you have print, except that you usually want smaller size. Obviously, you want it to look as best, but as small of a file size as possible. And there are many things that have been done to do this. GIFs, indexing, PNG, which kind of some people might think is the counterpart to GIFs, is open source. Also does indexing, and many of the examples of that. JPEGs are also very good for getting small file sizes. I think now we're actually going to get into some more of the specifics of the two different programs. And okay, I will start off just showing you a little bit of GIMP. This is just going to be kind of an overview. So we're really just trying to show off as many of the features as possible in order to push people in the right direction. Just to really show off that it's not that hard to get into it. It's not that hard to just start getting into this. So I made up a little example. Basically, I wanted to show off, first off, how to do layers. So let's just open up. We have GIMP already open. Select the new project. And that's a good file size. And we basically just have just white space. Now with the tools that you have your basic tools like you might have in MS Paint or any other painting programs that you might like.
We all started, MS Paint originally, so we sort of graduated to something more.
Yeah, I don't know how many years I tried doing MS Paint for my projects. But you have all your your brush selections for different size brushes. You have your color selector for all your different colors that you could possibly want. And again, GIMP and Photoshop will have many of these tools, just slightly called differently. But the one thing that really separates this from MS Paint, you'll notice, is a lot of the extra features, such as the filters that you have. You can have blurring effects, you can have coloring effects, artistic effects, mapping effects. You could go through this for hours and just play with all these features, and that's pretty much, if you're going to get into either of these programs, that's what you're going to want to do, is just sit down with one of the manuals and play with all the features. And also, you can find new plugins online as well. From GIMP has a site on a page on their site to download any new plugins. The other nice feature with some of these more professional programs would be the extra layering that you can do. So what many people start off doing is they'll keep editing the same picture over and over again, and then they'll get to a certain point and they just would like to say, let's just take that entire last thing I did off. And they'll start undoing it or redoing things, and then they don't quite get that one step they wanted. So it's kind of nice to be able to create a new layer and then just start being able to draw on top of that. If you see over in the right-hand side, the layering window, it actually is, the red line is actually a separate layer. So you can simply just turn that off if you want to get it out of your picture. You didn't think you'd be dealing with squiggly lines today, did you?
Looks like worse.
That was purposeful.
Good eye. And so there are also very nice features you can do with layering effects. You can add layer masks, which is one of my favorite things to do because it makes it very simple to just have a very soft blending from one image to the next. So you can take your gradient tool, which will basically just make a smooth transition from one color to another, and use the layer mask, which basically just takes an entire black and white image, layered over top of the layer you're working with, and basically depending on the lighter is, the more it will let through of that image. The darker it is, the more it covers up. So if you just put a gradient on this, you can have it go from slightly faded to very faded, and have some fun features with that. We'll exit out of that now, and we'll actually get into the project I'd like to show off. Those are just some of the tools that I would be using to actually show off the project that I was working on. Basically, I was kind of playing around one day, like I usually do with GIMP, and started noticing that if you just start applying a simple basic pattern into the same image over and over again, you can come out with a very interesting looking texture. So this is simply a fractal made by GIMP, one of the plugins that it has for filtering. So if you go to Filters, Render, Fractal Explorer, and you have tons of different fractals to pick from. So I think I just use leaves for this one. Yes. And you have a very, very basic pattern that you can start off with to play with. Now with the layers, what I did is just copied this and made it seamless so it can be set as a pattern without really looking like there's any just specific lines where the pattern starts and ends. And then I shrunk it down in order to make just a 1/10 of the size image of the original. And then using that, I can lay out an entire pattern for it. And these are all separate layers right here as well. Using this, then I lay it over top of the original image again, just to play around with it, see what looks nice. Because that's really going to be what you're going to want to do when you get into this, is just keep playing around until you see something that you like. There's also a nice rendering feature in the filters. If you go to Filters, Artistic, and Cubism, it does kind of a pixelated type filter, only a bit cleaner than what you might normally think of as pixelated. It basically chops it up and rotates it and makes it look like a bunch of cubes. But it made for very sharp lines, which is kind of what I wanted to go for. That's a hideous color on the screen. And simply by taking the same pattern and rotating it a few times, I was able to come up with a different hideous color on the screen. And another one that doesn't look as bad on the screen. And also then having fun with the layer masks, I was able to layer where exactly it would come through. You can see if I take that layer away, you can see a little bit more brown over top of the green. When I put the green layer in there, it's a little bit more green than there was in the original picture. And then I still have that nice red background. So it makes it very simple to just put that layer over your background and just the areas that you want. And that's beautiful. Looks okay. And then I pretty much threw it all in one image and edited the colors a little bit. I probably should have showed you the color editor. If you go to Tools, Color Tools, and Levels, it gives you a very nice window that you can basically play around with the colors. You can go through each channel of colors, go to red. Anything black in the picture is going to be more red if I raise the low end up. If I have the layer selected, then I go to Tools and Colors. It makes anything dark more red, and same applies for the other colors. And these are really fun to play around with, and I highly suggest playing around with colors for quite a while. Actually, Corey showed me an interesting project just earlier where he was able to take just an image of himself and using the levels of the colors make a very artistic perspective of himself.